Do you know two women and one of them is talkative while the other is quiet? In a group situation, do you think the talkative woman is also the clever one? Is being a quiet person detrimental to how you are perceived, especially if you are a woman? How often do you feel you need to fill a silence by just talking? This is Stories Seldom Told. I am Smita Tharoor. Hello everybody. I'd like to introduce Charmi Chheda. Charmi Chheda is a filmmaker, writer, theatre director in Bhutan. Charmi moved to Bhutan 10 years ago from India and now sees Bhutan as her home. Charmi has made two feature films, Ganganam Girl and Bulwa. And well, guess what? I've seen both films, I'm happy to announce, which is why I reached out to Charmi to say I'd love to speak to her further. Charmi is currently working with Samuh, which is Bhutan's first OTT platform, as a creative director. Thank you, Charmi, for joining me today to share your stories of unconscious bias.
Smita, thank you so much. I'm so happy you have watched both the films. And I remember and loved our interaction after the screening of Gangnam at BFI.
That's correct.
It was shot, but it was really nice. So thank you.
And it won an award at BFI, if I'm not mistaken, Charmi.
That's right. Yes. It was the Debbie Award. It was for the best film. So, and it was for my first feature film. So yes, it was a very happy moment. And meeting you, that was,
which is fantastic. Imagine that.
Your feedback.
No, which is great. So I mean, I'd love to hear more about your influences and so on, which is why you and I are here together to have this conversation. You're sitting in Bhutan and I'm sitting in Delhi, not in London, which is where I usually live. So it's just a mere 1 hour time difference, which is also quite nice to be able to have our conversation. But before we even have this chat, when we're thinking about the words unconscious bias, what does that mean to you?
First of all, I must say that I really love your idea of the podcast. And you gave me homework, and I loved that because I researched. Of course, there is a certain understanding when you hear the word, but everything changes when you start, diving deeper into this topic. And we're all, I think, living examples of this unconscious bias. A lot of our lives actually is made. So I'm sure that every time you meet the guests, they all have the similar things to say in terms of, yes, it is like holding of, beliefs, or maybe holding of beliefs like outside of your conscious understanding of things. And maybe that is influenced by where we come from and how we are molded, people around us, our parents, our community, and all of that. But I also think it's also a way, as human beings, we have this sort of habit of putting everything into boxes, ideas, people, things. We are always consciously, actually somewhere, we're putting things into boxes. And maybe that is coming from unconscious bias.
It makes a lot of sense, Charmi, because and we do, don't we? It makes life so much easier for us, doesn't it? If we put things into boxes, it's in the box. We know where it is. We know how to find X, Y, Z. And as if the box is like a bit like Pandora's box gets opened, and then things are flying all over the place, I suppose to some degree we have less control of our lives. Maybe, I'm not sure, but what you're saying makes absolute sense to me.
And when I think of this box, it becomes even more interesting because, yes, I'm a filmmaker, but I also come from theater background and also a lot of dance. And in theater and dance, we always do things in circle. And even when I facilitate or I start, I do everything in a circle. And I feel that sort of changes everything compared to a very classroom or a theater kind of setup, which is one, and then people facing you. So that is why I feel art has so much influence in finding the voice, in finding a true self, which is very sort of opposite to the unconscious.
No, and I love the fact that you decided instinctively to always do things in a circle. because immediately what I'm visualizing is one of inclusivity. There's no front and back. There's no right and left. It's all, we're all together. Yeah, this is it. There's one
collective consciousness.
It's a one collective, isn't there? That's great. So, but tell us a little bit more about you then, Charmi. I mean, you said you've been thinking about unconscious bias because I gave you homework. But I mean, homework as in sort of delving deeper into your own stories. And that's what we'd love to, both the listeners and myself would love to hear more about. Could you share a story with us?
Sure. I think as artists, as filmmaker, storyteller, I think we live a little bit on the edge, and especially in the world of creation. I realize it's more thanks to your homework that we live lives which is like all, I think, sort of interwoven and connected. I somewhere, I think, I don't know where my life, my reality merges with my stories, and everything is like an extension. So I think for my first story, that is why I've picked up my character from my second film, which you have watched, Bulwa, An Offering. So this film and the story is primarily about a monk who's been asked to set out on a journey outside of his comfort zone, outside of a monastery, to interact with the world outside. And somewhere his teacher, who's a very high realized person, realized monk, sees that he has it in him, but he needs to break these barriers, conformity, because this monk has grown up with always wearing red robes and also having a certain idea about life, about religion, about spirituality. His life has always been about chanting and prayers. And he has just this imagination of the outside world, which probably is very perfect in his head. So I think that when he goes out into the world and meets young people, and he's faced with the reality of society, of the lives of young people, be it their music, be it their way of life, be it their issues, their problems, his world is sort of thrown off. And I think he becomes like this perfect example of unconscious bias, because what he really needs to do here is break out of this belief system that he's born with, that he's grown up with. And what a drastic different world it is, because this is what is again very special about Bhutan. Bhutan has a lot of these parallel worlds going on. You have on one side this very urban, modern, things and life moving that way. But when you look outside of the window, you have monastery and you have mountains, and you live in this surreal world, and a lot of things are very magical at the same time. And on the streets, you will see monks, and up on the mountains, you'll see yaks. And then in the city, you have a cafe where you get pizza. So there's this two very beautiful opposing worlds living together. So I think he, for me, becomes this perfect example of unconscious bias. And when he breaks this, actually, he truly finds a path and purpose of life.
Yeah, in fact, it was reminding me a little bit of Gautama Buddha. And for those of us who don't know the story of Buddha, he was a prince, he was a king, he had a wife, he had a child. He lived in a luxurious life in a palace, but he was cocooned in the palace. And his father did not want him to see any kind of what you and I would call real life, whether it's having a pizza, or metaphorically, I mean, or whether it's death, or whether it's illness, or whether it's old age. And then, of course, the story is that, he wants to go out one day, and over a period of 3 visits, he sees death, he sees old age, and he sees suffering, and he realizes that he needs to know more about the world. And so that's, some of us who know the story of Buddha would know that story, but I thought I should just relate it for the context of for our listeners, because not everybody would know that story. But to me, what you're saying makes sense, but you're saying that influenced you. I mean, that movie, Bilwa, the film that I saw most recently, influenced you because it was so much about you. So, tell us a little bit more.
It's so true. I mean, every time we write a story and we create characters, somewhere these characters are an extension of ourselves or of our lives, somewhere. So I think that's why I think I chose this particular thing, that we live in, when we grow up and when we live just in our world with our families and our community, our ideas sort of stick to that, and we grow up believing that that is the truth, that is our truth, that is what we are thinking and we are feeling, and that's also that's the way of doing things. But it's only when we break out of our comfort zone and go out and see the world through different people and different eyes, and then also have this empathy. I think empathy becomes and plays a very big role here. So for me, when this monk, whose name is Tempa in the film, when he goes out in the beginning, he's reluctant. He almost doesn't want to go. He says, please, like, let me stay in the monastery. I don't want to go into this outside world. But then when he goes out, his first reaction is, what's wrong with these kids? How can they behave like this? But then slowly, when he gets into the bottom of their story, he actually turns into an empath. And I think for me personally, that's what happened to me as well, that I lived in a certain way in the city. And then I come to the mountains and I look at life here and I look at their belief system and the thinking, and I started changing. And I can say that over 10 years, I have changed a lot. So it's really, in fact, it was very shocking for me that when I started making films, after I moved from theater into films, my stories were very naturally Bhutanese stories of the mountain, because now I've integrated so much into this world that's what was coming naturally. Because I think I've broken my own biases, and I've come and I've adapted and integrated into this beautiful place here. So I think
so
that's where
in many ways, just for us to understand further, Charmi, because you when I read your introduction out, all I said is that you moved to Bhutan 10 years ago. So you're actually technically not Bhutanese, but certainly from a perspective of your implicit influence in terms of filmmaking, you are completely Bhutanese. That's what you're saying.
Totally. I would say that actually I'm a true Indian. That's why I'm a true Bhutanese, and I'm a true Bhutanese. That's why I'm a true Indian. That's how I look at it. I look at one as my roots and one as my wings, because I think I truly broke out of my own prison, and I could spread my wings in the way I want, and that happened here. And that's why I owe so much to Bhutan, and I feel so much at home here. So I was born and brought up in Bombay, but my roots are in Kutch, Run of Kutch. And, it's very strange, but growing up in Bombay and studying in a convent school, after coming, I realized that we don't really have anything like culture as such. We're a mix of many things, and maybe that is also positive in a way. That's why we can adapt, I think, very easily. But there is definitely a lack of culture growing up in big cities. And after I moved to Bhutan, I happened to be the creative director of Royal Academy of Performing Arts, which comes under the Ministry of Home and Cultural Affairs in Bhutan. And I work very closely with the artists, with the culture, actually, the traditional music and dance. And one day when I was watching the traditional dance here, the folk dance, which also happens in a circle, and suddenly I was transported. And I was like, oh my God, that's so much like, like Gujarat, like Kutch, where you do the garba in the circle, and the hands move the same way, and you're channeling the goddess. And even here it is, equivalent of Saraswati, which is Yanshinma. So everything just started changing and making sense. And now, strangely, I can't relate to the city anymore, but my heart has totally gone. And now I'm doing research on my roots on Kutch and trying to find out more about that story.
About your roots.
Thanks to a place that I never thought, first of all, I will be in. Yeah. So it's just amazing
But isn't
how
that
these things.
interesting, though, about us as human beings? And the fact that you needed to be in another country for 10 years and absorb that culture, embrace that culture, live that culture, for you to then go back to your original roots of Kutch and start learning and absorbing about that. It says so much about us as human beings. But tell us another story, Charmi.
My second one, again, my third one is a little bit more about life and me. The second one, again, is from my first film, but that film is Gangnam Girls, was basically, as you know, story about four friends, four women. And even though it is based in Bhutan, in the capital city of Thimphu, every time I've shown this film anywhere, and people from all over the world, when they've watched, the first reaction has been as, that's like us, we can relate to this. And again, even though it was like women centric, even men have told me that they could relate to it because it's a story of friendship. But from that, I would like to talk about a particular thing, because I think that's somewhere, again, I've had a personal experience of that. So there's one character in the film named Tara, and there's her friend, her best friend, Soki, who's an artist. Now, in the film plot, I don't want to, of course, give away too much of
Don't
that.
give it away, no.
But Tara basically finds that her best friend, or rather she doubts or she knows, we don't know, but thinks that her best friend is having an affair with her father. Now, the plot goes around this. But what my focus here mainly was that Soki is a very outgoing, bold artist. She speaks her mind and she's very free, and she does her love interests usually are men who are much older, mature men. So Tara, somewhere, we don't know whether that's reality, but she assumes, and even though she's seen things or not seen things clearly, she assumes that because she's like this, because Soki's like this, it is very, very natural, and it is the reality that she probably has an affair with my father. And I feel that this is something that happens in every society, especially to women who are very, I think this is a great example for me personally of unconscious bias. I feel that somebody we see as very free and colorful, we immediately stereotype these women. And women who are generally, I'm talking about a judgmental sort of a situation here. And women who behave in a certain way, if they're very serious or if they speak less, they tend to be, or maybe she's an introvert, or maybe she's not a flirt, or she's not too open-minded.
And so you feel this is specifically more for women than for men, because we're looking, and I've seen some ads around this as well, where, advertising, I can't remember what the ad was for, but when you're seeing a woman with, stiletto heels and paint nail polish and trying to suggest something, they don't see her as seriously as perhaps the man who's wearing a suit and looking quite serious. And they're both senior professionals in a corporate organization, purely because of the dress, the superficial look of the person. And you're adding to that. And what you're saying is, it's also about behavior patterns. So you're saying if a woman is fairly, very friendly, voluble, confident, extrovert, for want of a better word, she's judged in a particular way, whereas a quiet, more serious person is judged in a very contradictory way.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not saying again all the time, but a lot this has happened. I'll give you another extension and example of this. I mean, I grew up actually as an introvert.
As
an introvert.
All right.
I was an introvert, actually. I can say that's my...
What is an introvert? Firstly, let me ask you that question.
I mean, in the most typical sense, growing up, I was someone who was very quiet, very shy, keeping to myself. I wouldn't want to talk to anybody or be noticed. And I would ensure that, if I'm in a room, I'm almost like not there. So I wouldn't have friends.
Why was that, do you think, Charmi? Let's just stay with that for a minute. Why were you an introvert?
I think, first of all, that was my sort of personality that I was born with. And but there is other side to it, that I was also very imaginative. And I still feel that my storyteller side actually comes from there. My writer side actually comes from that space of being with my own thoughts and my own beliefs. And there was a world inside of my head, and the world was enough for me. There was a universe I was living in, and that was fine. I looked at the outside maybe as strange. It could be something to do with where I came from before, if we believe in the concept of past life. I don't know.
Right.
But then, and everybody kept saying, when growing up, I don't know, what is this compulsive need of not just parents, but especially extended family, to have like, oh, she's so quiet, you should do something about it. Why don't you? She should be more confident. Why? Why this? Why can't
Well, that's another thing, you see. Because earlier on, when we were talking about looking at two adult women, one who's voluble and extrovert and chatty, the assumptions you were saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, was that she is somebody who's probably more free and easy, might have more lovers, might have a better, different kind of life. Whereas the quiet, shy, serious woman may not have many boyfriends or may not have that kind of life at all. That was the adult point of quiet and not so quiet. But as a child, what you're saying is that what the parents want for the quiet child is for the quiet child to talk more. So what does that suggest then in terms of expectations of the person?
I think parents, and today I think it's even more, I think parents in general are just confused about what they want out of their child. Because in today's time, I think things have changed a lot in terms of they want the kids to be confident and extroverted because of the competition out there, and they want them to remain that way. But I think earlier it was a little bit more stranger, because first they want you to talk, and when you start talking, they're wondering that why are you talking so much, or why have you turned into this,
So neither is good enough, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Now I think things are changing according to, but there are a few of these, I would say, biases that still remain, that somehow still remain. Also, the other thing is that I think the parents would feel that if the child is very quiet and introverted, people may think that she's not intelligent enough, or she's not adaptable or smart enough. That was also, I think,
why is it that the world over, it's not Bhutan, it's not India, the world over, that we make...
I think somewhere because everyone is constantly putting up a show, I feel, and the world expects you to constantly put up a show. And now with social media and all these platforms, I think even more so, that everybody's got, I mean, it's really, I think for the, even like, for example, making a video or making a TikTok or making a reel, I'm really I won't be surprised if people are confused about the real and the real as time is passing. So I think this judgment about one's intelligence really comes out of show, and everybody, it's like you're sitting in a meeting or you're with friends, you need to have something to say. If you don't have anything to say, if you decide to be quiet, it's like, oh, this person is not smart enough. They don't have anything to say.
But in your particular instance, the reason you were quiet, with the benefit of hindsight, is because you were making up your stories in your head, and you were quite happy with yourself. You were not unhappy being quiet. Is that correct?
Not at all. In fact, I think one of the issue, as I would say, or as I think it would be perceived, is I think I used to understand things a lot more than someone my age would have grasped.
Why is that?
Or understood. I think so. I don't know. It was just something naturally that probably I was born with. But I remember even at the age of 8 or 9 or 10, my understanding of human beings and world was something that was, I think, really beyond my Asian years. And when you have that kind of thinking and feeling, I think you cannot really articulate it. And at the same time, somehow your own play-like, childlike innocence sort of, I think it goes away. I'm just trying to, as we speak, also I'm trying to decode this a little bit. So I think that sort of silence also comes from there. I was very comfortable and happy with it. There was but
see, because
but
there's a lot of judgment, I find,
yes,
on people having to fill a silence. If you're in a group and there are 3 or 4 of you speaking and then it goes silent, someone always feels the need to fill that silence by speaking up. But sometimes silence by itself can be quite powerful as well, can it not?
Very powerful. I think now when I started writing again, and especially when I, sort of started writing stories and for films, I think I'm getting my energy, you could say, or this power from that self, from my young self.
From your youngster. Because I don't know whether you've seen, I've read the book. It's a book by Claire Keegan called Foster, an Irish writer. And the book was made into a film called The Quiet Girl. And that has been nominated for an Oscar as a foreign film because it's in Irish. It's not in English. And there is a line in the book and in the film, I've read the book and seen the film, where the child is a quiet girl. It's a quiet girl. And a character who's like her father says to her something like, being quiet is a good thing. It's fine. You only need to speak when you need to speak. And that's very powerful. The idea of being quiet if you need to be quiet is okay. Just because you're 8 or 10, and this is a young girl about that age, she's not obliged to speak. And she has the power of authority from an adult who says it's okay, which makes it even more powerful.
And that's it, that getting that okay from an adult around you actually just, I think, change everything.
Absolutely.
And I think in my case, I will not say that there were adults who were pushing me to speak, but my mom also is she loves art. So she used to just take me for a lot of things like drama classes and dance and tennis and painting. But for me, that used to be like a nightmare. Like she was very well-meaning about it, but for me, it used to be like, oh my God, because then I have to be around people. And that used to be very hard on me, actually. But now again, half the things I do is thanks to her and those experiences that I had very early on in life. So, it's just as you, at that time, I used to criticize to say, why are you doing this to me? I don't want to go for this. I don't want to go for this class. But now I actually I have so much gratitude actually towards
with the benefit of hindsight, we can learn a lot, can't we?
So I think coming back again to this character Aksoki, and as I was giving my own example, I then almost had a switch zone, and I turned into this complete brat overnight at somewhere at the age of 14 or something in school. And I was naughty, and people were shocked, like especially my family, that what happened to her. I was this, and I went to a convent school. So it was something just that even I cannot fathom until today, that how did that happen? And I was like a little bit like a tomboy, short hair and out there and colorful and very flamboyant personality. I suddenly became that. And then that was very hard for people to digest. And everyone, especially in the family and extended family, think, oh my God, she's you cannot, she's wild.
But why was that? What was it? What was your epiphany, or what was the trigger that made you go from the quiet girl to this full of life, naughty, tomboyish child?
I wish there was something more of this. It literally feels like I slept one night and I woke up next morning as someone else.
You just want to be somebody else. There was like a switch, is it?
There was a switch. There was a switch soul. It's like maybe I had like a deal and like somebody's just gone out and someone else is coming. I don't know. I don't know. But yes, even today, there are moments where I think that, as I said, that the challenge side does come. And in fact, very recently, I feel that more and I like it. And now I can handle both of these very well. These two selves that I have, I think I can handle very well. But I mean, I really have been subjected to this unconscious bias, which has left me so confused at an age, especially in my 20s. I'm like, what do people want, you know? When you are this, they want you to be this. When you become this, they want you to be this. So there is, and that's where somewhere this character and these characters also came from, these four girls. I see a little bit of me in all four of them. And, you know, I feel that just because somebody looks a certain way or talks a certain way or smiles a certain way,
don't put them into a box.
Don't put them into a box.
That's what you said with right at the outset. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
You know what they are and what they're made of, you know, where they come from, the journey. So
okay, share another story with us, Charmi.
I have one more, and this one is interesting. It's about, I think, our biases and again unconscious, I think, bias about success and money, an idea of success, you know, especially coming from Asia, from again Indian roots. So when I decided, I came to Bhutan as a tourist and I fell in love with Bhutan instantly. And I just felt that I've arrived home. I've come home. And I happened to get a job and everything. So I had an opportunity to quickly move here. But when I disclosed this to my friends and family, and I had this solid career going on in Bombay, I was doing well. And everyone was like, you know, who goes to the mountains? Who goes to the mountains? You know, why you should go to UK, you go to US, you go to Australia, you go to, you know, something which is modern, somewhere where you grow. And that made me really think that all the more reasons I don't want to live here. And I'm running to the mountain for sure. And I made my decision and I came here, and it's the best decision of my life. And I'm so happy. And in my eyes and mind, I'm very successful with what I'm doing because I'm so happy.
But the idea of success, let's just work with that first for another minute. Let's stay with that, should I say, for another minute. What does success look like? What does success even mean?
I don't know about others because I've had this discussion over and over again. And I do know for many people, it is definitely the car you drive, and it's your bank balance, and it's your rewards and so on, and what size of house and where your house is. And in India and Bombay, Delhi, typically in which area you live in, the south, the north, and all of that. But for me personally, I think I look at growth success as a horizontal expansion and of my heart, myself, of my mind, and of my purpose of life. And if I can do all of that, and I can have other people with me in that, and I can smile end of the day and be happy and radiate a light from inside me, I think that's truly what it is. And that's why I think I live here and I love living here for, many other reasons.
Can you, because I think it'll be useful for the listeners to understand what you mean by horizontal. You know, you said your life is horizontal. What does that mean? I want you to really help us understand a little bit more what that looks like.
This is just I think it's a little bit.
No, this is how you think, yeah, but it's about us learning also from that.
I have never somehow, I don't know, even from when I was very young, I've never had this thing of, I will go to school, then I'll go to college, I'll go to university, there's never been a ladder because, first of all, I broke all those barriers, even of education. I started work when I was 17. I had my high school complete much later. I was learning everything. I had to do everything possible. So I have broken those barriers all the time. I've never been a conformist, and I've had a very unconventional way of living. So I feel that we are expected in this world that we live in, everybody thinks there's this ladder that we are climbing. So for me, this vertical, I feel when you go anti-gravity, there's only that much you can grow. And at some point you're going to collapse. And this is also, it's a solo journey when you just go vertical. It's just you alone. But the minute you grow this way,
Sideways.
Your foundation is stronger. There's room for many to come with you. You sort of, you grow together. And it's a more stronger, long-term, something with good foundation. So you will not just be up there and holding your water alone, but you will have so much more, and you will have so much of everything in your life. So that's what I mean.
That's beautifully said. I just want to summarize that again for our listeners, because what you're saying really is that the idea of success for you personally, and maybe for others who are listening, they might be nodding their heads and saying, I get that, Charmi, I totally do, is not about climbing that vertical ladder. It's not about going up all by yourself. Sometimes when you're being pushed down by others and then crawling back up again. It's actually, when we're using the word horizontal, you're talking about what you said much earlier on, which is about the circle. And the fact that it's about inclusive, and the fact that you want to create roots and create a foundation that helps you grow, because it's about your success, but you're not doing it alone.
No, it's not possible. It's not possible to live on this earth and say that I did it and I'm alone in this. I don't think, I mean, if we're that great, I don't think we would be living this humanly life just as we do. So I think there is definitely, this is the reason why where society is, we're born to a family. Otherwise we would probably just, fall from the sky. So if we really see the nature of our life, and again, I think this is an observation which became stronger and became my life philosophy when I moved here. And, Bhutan emphasizes so much on GNH, the gross national happiness, and on environment. This is a carbon negative country where 70% mandatory forest, you cannot cut the forest down. And it's really all around you. And I think the more I lived here, I understood that these life lessons are all actually in the nature. They're all in the forest. If you just observe how a tree grows or how a mountain sits, you just know that is, the life is right there. You don't have to, struggle much. So I think when I talk all of this, it comes also a lot, like it was there somewhere, but here I could bring it all
From the city of Bombay to the country of Bhutan, which is, I've never been to Bhutan, but whatever pictures I've seen, and certainly your 2 films that are shot in Bhutan, I can see the absolute stunning beauty of the country, the natural landscape, the mountains, the trees, the forest. So I understand where you're coming from. That's, and how much that can give us. But so I think you've already answered my question, Charmi, with your explanation of your growing and having success through horizontal, inclusive way of living. But perhaps you want to add to that if you were to think about these daily unconscious biases that challenge us all the time, how do you manage them?
I think that I would not say that I've been able to manage all my unconscious biases, because I think as human beings, we keep, thanks to our DNA, our body memory, the way we've grown up, there are some things that are just so, I think, getting it out of our system, and it probably happens slowly over the period of time. But I think for me, it is awareness. I'm very aware whether I'm
aware as in self-aware. That's what you're saying.
Self-awareness, and I'm very conscious about that. That I think every night I do analyze my day, my words, my actions, my interactions with people. And I think that's one way of handling it. And then again, I think I'm very lucky that I can write. And, when I started thinking more about unconscious bias, thanks to you, I realized that all our characters are actually based on this. They're all in this journey of unconscious, starting from unconscious bias to finding their true self and their true voice. This sort of non-ego in a way, and open to accepting things and people as they are. So I think it's very simple. There's nothing like, big to it, or I do this, I do that. It's not possible. Just I'm very human and flawed. And every day there are beautiful moments, and then there are struggle. But I think I get through all of it, and especially for the sake of my art, through awareness and self-awareness.
So really, thank you for that, because it's entirely about self-reflection, self-awareness on a constant level, and constantly questioning yourself about the decisions you've made and what you're doing. And that's not very easy to do, but you're just doing it as a normal.
Yes, because I think, again, because the pursuit of life here is something else for me, and that's why I chose this life that I've chosen to live. If I don't do this, then there is really no point for me to live in this beautiful space here and all it has to offer. So yes, it's not easy at times, but it's a constant pursuit.
I get that. And of course, Bhutan is there to support you. The beauty of Bhutan, to support you in your own growth and learning. That's great. Charmi Chheda, that is very kind of you to give me your time and share your stories of unconscious bias with me today.
Thank you so much for having me for this. And I forgot that we are having this podcast and Zoom. I just forgot. I just went into a different world, and I was listening to you, and you were bringing out all these. I think you brought up a lot of memories and stories, and it's going to linger on for some time now. And probably it will come out in form of some other stories.
I bet it will. And of course, for those of you who have not seen Charmi's film, you can certainly able to find Ganganam Girls. And I'm sure you will be able to see Bulwa very soon too as well. So thank you again, Charmi.
Thank you so much, Smita. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Stories Seldom Told. I am Smita Tharoor. It is you, the listener, that makes this podcast what it is. If you like this podcast, please do share. If any of you anywhere in the world feel that you have stories to share, please do connect with me on social media at Smita Tharoor on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, or on my company page, Tharoor Associates, on Facebook. We will be back next week.